Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Rutgers Rundown podcast. I'm your host, Nick Hart, alongside my co-host, Matt Mangam. It's the Monday after the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22, and we have a lot going on right here on the banks. Winter sports still in full effect, and spring sports are starting up. We got men's basketball, women's basketball, and we got some lacrosse action going on here at Rutgers. Let's jump right into it. You start with basketball. Now, you're going on the road against a ranked Maryland team. You're coming off of a victory, but the story in this one was you didn't have one of your best players in Ace Bailey. I mean, 2 for 4 points, and was visibly dealing with some kind of sickness throughout the game, whether that was a stomach bug or flu. Don't know what it was, but he was not himself in that game whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in the first half, I just noticed, Ace Bailey was not himself. I mean, the fact that he only put up 4 shots total just obviously proves that he wasn't 100%. And, after the game, of course, Pico was asked about Bailey, and basically what he said was, yeah, he has, all these guys referring to Harper, Jeremiah Williams have had, the flu. People say norovirus. Different things are flying around, but it's basically the flu. He's he tried to gut it out in the second half, but he couldn't. I appreciate his effort. And as you probably saw on Twitter, I mean, I couldn't see from my seat in the press box because I was kind of right behind the basket. But Ace Bailey went over to the bench in the second half. I think he only played about 3 minutes, and then he just completely disappeared from the game. Went over to the bench. He had a towel on his head. People say he had a bucket in front of him in case he was about to start puking. I don't know, because he obviously has the flu. Kind of like how Jeremiah Williams was going in and out of the locker room during the Michigan games. I remember reading Jerry Kreuner's article that he was he would go puke and then come back because obviously he was trying to gut it out, but he just couldn't play. So Bailey has that same issue, probably the towel on his head, maybe because he was having maybe warm for a fever or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, Ace Bailey, not 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play at all on Wednesday against Iowa. I would not be surprised. And looking at the box score, I mean, of course, Rutgers lost by 9, 90-81. But I'm telling you, Nick, once Rutgers gave up that run in the first half after they led 14-7 and Maryland just completely took over, it felt like the game was already over by there. The whole second half, I mean, I don't want to be a pessimistic person. Obviously, I cover Rutgers. I want to be neutral, but I just knew that this game felt like it was completely over.
Yeah, I mean, and it showed. I think the biggest thing out of this game was it showed Rutgers' lack of a true big man.
Oh yeah.
Obviously Lathan is doing what he can. Still a freshman. Still, he's not a true big man. He's more of a forward. I think that's what suits him best. But Rutgers just they haven't found their groove, and you're getting to a point in the season where if you don't find it now, you're probably not going to find it, unfortunately. But it feels like every game Rutgers just is getting dominated in some aspect, and in this game it felt like it was the rebounding. Rutgers, again, not the biggest team. You're probably without your 2 biggest players on the floor, with Ace Bailey not being 100% healthy and Ogbole being out for the year. But you're right. It was a 9-point loss, but you could have told me Rutgers lost by 20, and I would have believed you.
Yeah.
Just not a good game overall. I mean, it's getting tougher and tougher to remain optimistic, both as a fan and somebody covering this team. It seems like you have your performances from your guys. I mean, Dylan Harper, not a great night, not a terrible night. He was 7-17 from the floor, didn't hit any of his 3-point attempts, finished with 20 points. Dylan Grant has been probably one of the saving graces of this Rutgers team in the past couple of games. He had 19, but other than that, not having your primary scorer in Ace Bailey kind of killed you in a game that, if he's healthy and has even just 10 points, instead of talking about a 9-point loss where it didn't seem like Rutgers was close, you might be talking about a 2-point or 3-point win with whatever he can do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember saying that after. I'm like, if Ace Bailey had 4 points in this game, if he had his normal, maybe 16 to 20 or in that range, Rutgers would definitely win this game. You would have had Harper, Grant, and Bailey all, leading the team basically. And I want to talk about Derek Queen. I mean, wow, he is a damn good player. He had a double-double already before the first half even ended, Nick. It was insane. 15 points, a career-high 29... I said 15 points. 15 rebounds, a career-high 29 points. 9 of 16 from the floor, 11 of 13 from the line. He's a big man. He's going to get fouled every single time he puts up a shot or, even just does anything. Basically, it's kind of like, not like saying he's like Zach Edey, but, he's one of those guys where he gets to the line a lot, and, hey, he can hit those free throws too. So, a damn good player. It was definitely fun to see, him on the floor because I know he's also like another highly regarded freshman. And after the game, actually, I remember I was in the media room writing my article, and they had the Maryland press conference right after Rutgers, and he was talking about how he actually knows like Harper. They go back to middle school and everything, and he was like, yeah, Harper and Bailey, of course, two of the top three, you could say, freshmen in the nation and also the NBA draft. But Queen wanted to use this game as put a name for myself out there, and he really did, Nick. 29 points, 15 rebounds. Derek Queen, is like, hey, I want to put my name for myself on the map. And, he's been doing it all season, but in this game, he really showed it. And you're right, Rutgers didn't have a big man. Well, they did with Lathan Somerville, but it just felt like, you don't have somebody like Cliff, of course, like Bully not there. So, Queen was really able to dominate inside, and yeah, Rutgers was just killed in the paint all afternoon.
And another aspect of the game where Rutgers was just outplayed, there's no other way to say it, was from beyond the arc. 10 of 27 for Maryland, so there's 30 points right there. Rutgers on the other end, 3 of 16. This has not been a good three-point shooting team all season. They don't take a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of threes.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see because you have guys who were known as three-point shooters. Jordan Durkak, Zach Martini, both of these guys were guys that can knock down the three ball, and you haven't seen it this season. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, but the 2 early first half threes for Zach Martini and then nothing in the second half, Jordan Durkak doesn't get one to go. Only 2 players made a three-pointer for Rutgers. It was Zach Martini and JaMychal Davis. You're not going to win a lot of games that way, especially not in this time in college basketball. This is what the game is. You have to be able to shoot from the perimeter, and Rutgers didn't really have that. Granted, Harper and Bailey are guys that can make three-pointers, but it can't just be 2 guys every time. You've seen it time in and time out where Harper and Bailey have great games, and I feel like a broken record saying this, but nobody else shows up to produce, and you don't win. Today or the other day, it was Harper and Grant that had solid games. Lathan had 12, and Martini ended up with 10, but outside of that, you had Jeremiah Williams with 4, Ace Bailey with 4, but we'll put an asterisk next to his name because he was sick. And then you didn't really have much other production outside of that. You can't expect to win Big Ten games, especially when you're a team that's giving up 80-plus points a game, if you can't hit jump shots.
Yeah, no, definitely. Going back to the three-point attempts, of course, Harper also would always nail a couple. He had an off day beyond the arc, 0-4, like you said. Again, Ace Bailey, if you put a healthy Ace Bailey in there, he's going to chuck down maybe 2 or 3 threes as well. So, the Rutgers didn't have 2 of their best three-point guys on their A game. And then, Tyson Acuff, only 3 minutes, very weird. And then PJ Hayes, doesn't even get into the game. Maybe Peichel isn't as keen as him as he was anymore at the beginning of the season, but still, put him in, have him chuck up 3 or 4 threes. So definitely knock 1 or 2 down, and then maybe it's a closer game. It just baffles me that, why are you not playing Acuff only 3 minutes? I don't get it. And then PJ Hayes doesn't even get a sniff of the court. I don't understand. And now, if Rutgers beat Maryland, they would have been back into the NCAA tournament bubble talk. And I think that's completely over. But, still would have been something. It would have definitely created some separation for them from the bottom Big Ten teams ahead of the Big Ten tournament coming up soon. And now they go back home to play Iowa on Wednesday. Iowa isn't that great of a team, but it's still going to be a tough game for Rutgers, especially likely without Ace Bailey. But yeah, Nick, it's just really disappointing for Rutgers this season. I think, going into the season, Rutgers fans thought they could beat a team like Maryland with Harper and Bailey. And of course, I know you didn't have Bailey, but you still have the team you would think to beat Maryland. But yet again, another disappointing game.
At this point, again, I think I said it one of the last times was I'm not confident in Rutgers going into any of these games. Rutgers just hasn't shown me that they can beat good teams, at least consistently. And again, it was a road game. You didn't have your best players, what have you, but at this point, you got to stop making excuses.
Yeah.
It's just come to terms with the fact that this team might not be as good as a lot of people thought it was going to be. And again, a lot of that falls on the shoulders of you put a lot of pressure on two freshmen. Granted, they are exceptional talents, probably some of the best talents that'll ever come through Rutgers basketball. But you put a lot of pressure on the shoulders of two 18, maybe 19-year-olds, and there wasn't much around them. Again, on paper, maybe it looked a little bit better, but the way it's played out, this team is just not good.
Yeah, I mean, this might go down, probably will go down as the most disappointing basketball season in Rutgers men's basketball history.
Without a doubt, Peichel he's done so much more with so much less.
Yeah.
And I think another part of that was the expectations kind of got to him. You know, you were supposed to have this team be a surefire lock for the tournament. You were ranked top 25 coming into the season.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, slowly but steadily, that momentum continued to die down. And then first it was you lost the ranking. Then you lost to Kennesaw. Then you lost to Princeton. And slowly but surely you trickled down the standings in the Big Ten. And now we are where we are now. I mean, it's I think disappointing is an understatement to what this season has brought.
I mean, to put it bluntly, Peichel has wasted literally a miracle, you could say. The fact that Harper, I mean, I don't want to say the fact that Harper committed to Rutgers is lucky, because I know there's obviously the history of Ron Harper and everything. But still, the fact that Rutgers was able to get two of the top freshman recruits, you know, Bailey and Harper, 2 and 3, or what have you, no matter what number they are. I mean, they play amazing. But the fact they're able to get these two guys, which likely would never happen again, and they're not going to make the NCAA tournament, is ridiculous. Come on, like, what else can you say?
I mean, at this point, it's just you're playing to get into the Big Ten tournament. It's going to take nothing short of a miracle to get in, especially because the rest of your season isn't easy. I mean, you finish the season at number 7, Purdue. You got to play Michigan, who's a ranked team. You know, coming up, you're hosting Iowa, but then you go on a West Coast trip to play the number 16 team in the country, Oregon. Then
they're actually not ranked anymore. I don't know why it's like that.
Yeah, well,
but it's
you play
still a tough
Oregon,
game.
you play Washington, you play USC. They're tough games, and it's not going to get any easier in the Big Ten. And unfortunately for Rutgers fans that had these lofty expectations, this is not going to be the year. So buckle up, you know, take the ride on to next season, but very, very unlikely that this is the year. Move over on now to women's basketball, who is also in their own fight for a Big Ten tournament spot. Might look a little differently than the Rutgers men's team, that is. But the women's basketball team with a big win, 78-69 over Purdue, and that gives them their second conference victory. Now, as if the season ended today, they would be enough to get into the tournament. They are currently the 15th seed in the Big Ten. They're tied with Wisconsin, for that spot with the 2 wins. But Rutgers played a solid game, and even more impressively, they did it without probably their best player in Keomi McMiller, who was out for this game. Talked to Coach Coquise Washington afterwards. She said, you know, pretty much that Keomi wasn't 100%. She doesn't know when she will be 100%, and when she is, she'll be back on the court. So, you know, not sure if that's maybe a nagging injury that's been going on or what, but Rutgers was without her. But they finally got production from all over their lineup. Destiny Adams was great, 20 points. You know that story. You hear it all the time.
Yeah.
JoJo Lacey finally had another great game with 22 points. And then Maya Petticord, props to her, man. She went down in the Indiana game with what looked like a sprained ankle, was on crutches, not able to put weight on it, and she went out on Sunday and she balled out, for lack of a better term. 5 of 9 from the field, knocked down two 3-pointers, finished with 17 points on the game. And, you know, that's what Rutgers needs. They need other people to step up outside of Adams, outside of McMiller, especially when McMiller's not healthy. And listen, the way that the women's Big Ten conference looks right now, if Rutgers can squeak out 2, maybe 3 more conference wins, I think that all but locks them up a spot in the tournament.
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, there are 2 remaining home games that are against teams that are just as bad in the Big Ten. You could say even worse. Penn State 1-12 in conference play, Northwestern 1-10 in conference play, and Rutgers beat Penn State right away this season, and Northwestern they play at home this Monday. Well, actually a week from today. So, yeah, Nick, I think those 2 games are guaranteed wins. You would not guaranteed wins. You have to win those games to get into the tournament. Then you play, the West Coast games are going to be tough, obviously, and then starting most importantly first with Iowa on Thursday at Iowa. So yes, there's still some tough games, or all the road games are definitely the hardest ones left. But 100% truthful, Maya Petticord, big game from her, and yeah, I mean, I watched that game, and when she went down, I was like, she was not putting any weight on it, limping off with the trainers, and she got back out there, got 17 points. And yeah, I mean, McMiller, we'll see what happens, see what it is. I don't know if it's injury or illness. I'm guessing it sounds more like injury from what I've heard.
It seems like injury, and obviously you don't want to make assumptions, but she was with the team on Sunday. She was out there kind of just standing around her and shoot around. She did put up a couple shots, her patented pregame half-court shot that she always likes to hit. But again, was in street clothes and was not a participant in warm-ups, wasn't a participant in the game. She showed up on the Big Ten availability report. So, obviously you want to see your best player out there, and not just for the sake of Rutgers, but for the sake of fans. I mean, people are coming to watch what Kiyomi McMiller is going to do game in and game out. She's been great this season, great ball handler, one of the top freshman scorers in the conference. And you pair her with some of the teammates that she has around her. I mean, Destiny Adams, how much more can you say about what she's done here on the Banks in her 2 seasons? Another double-double, another 20-point double-double for the senior. And it was pretty cool, I will say. At the game on Sunday, it was the Play for K game, the annual game that Rutgers does to support cancer research. So that was nice, but also a nice game for Destiny Adams. She did have her family in attendance for the game.
Nice.
I believe her brothers and sisters were there. And, we asked her afterwards what that's like, and she's like, it's so cool because her brother isn't around to watch her play all that much. And for those of you that don't know, he's committed to go play basketball at UConn.
Yeah, he's really, really good.
It's Darius Adams, isn't it?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So he is on his way to play for a pretty good program and a pretty good head coach up there in UConn. But, you look at the schedule for Rutgers, Matt, and you said it best. You said the West Coast trip's going to be tough. Iowa's going to be tough, but you got to take care of business where you can. You got to beat Northwestern, and you got to beat Penn State again. And if you do, you're going to be playing extra basketball this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a disappointing season for Rutgers. We all know that. But if you could just make the tournament and maybe you get a surprise win early in the first round, and then, you lose. But still, that looks like a not a bad season. And I'm not trying to say that this is a good season for Rutgers by any means, doing this bad in Big Ten play and getting just a win in the Big Ten tournament. This should obviously not be the goal, but still getting the tournament, getting a win maybe is still impressive. I mean, in 2022-2023, Rutgers had another mediocre year, 12-20 overall, 5-13 in Big Ten play. That was the first year under Colquist, and they beat Northwestern in the Big Ten tournament, lost to Illinois in the second round, pretty bad. But still, it was a bad year, but they still got a tournament win. But regardless, it's not obviously what you want from this team. This program has done much better in the past. But, I mean, after how poor they were in the middle of the season down in that stretch, I don't know how many games it was, Nick, but what, did they lose, 8 straight games?
It was 7-8 games in a row until they won that Penn State game.
Yeah.
It was not a good stretch by any means.
Yeah, so if you could just still squeak into the tournament and, maybe make some noise, just get a win, it's still something important to build off of. This also is a young team. It's a little bit of both.
It is, but it isn't. There's a lot
I guess with Adams and Lacey.
I mean, you think about it, the players you're losing next season if you're Rutgers. Destiny Adams graduates. China Cornwell graduates. Awa Sidibe graduates. JoJo Lacey won't be back.
Oh, yeah.
So you're losing 4 or 5 players, and then you have your core of
Thompson,
Kiyomi, Lisa Thompson, Maya Petticord's back for another year. Zakara Perkins obviously back, Janae Walker back. So they have some work to do, both recruiting and in the transfer portal.
100%.
But we are going to move it on over back, actually, to Maryland. Matt, you did a little double feature for the Targum. You covered wrestling and men's basketball. Luckily, wrestling produced a win, a close one, 21-20.
Oh, yeah.
Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, well, after that tough loss to Minnesota 2 weeks ago, 28-9, I look at this game a match against Maryland, and Maryland, they got some ranked guys in the lineup. They were ranked number 25 for a little bit, but they dipped out of the ranking. So I go into this match, I'm expecting, and I'm not just me, pretty much everybody that knows wrestling is expecting Rutgers to pretty much take care of business here. Starts off with a nice tech fall from Dean Peterson, and then at 133, a good bout between Braxton Brown and Dylan Shawver. These two guys met last season in the Rutgers Maryland duel. Shawver won that one, and at the Big Ten championships, Shawver also won that en route to his Big Ten title. So, these two have history with each other. And this time, Braxton Brown got his first win over Shawver. He won 6-3 by decision. Like I said, a very, very intense bout. Some stalling calls that Goodale wasn't happy with. It was pretty cool where I was sitting. I was literally right. I was sitting behind the scorer's bench, whatever. So on Big Ten Plus, you can see me sitting there. And also when Goodale went over to go talk to our referee, he walked right in front of me, and he's just like, what are you doing? Stuff like that. And they go over and they review, and I can see them right there, watching the replay. Pretty cool. But then you go back to the match. Oliveri and Andy Clark, 2 nice wins. And then looking at 157, Ethan Miller beats Connor Harrer. Then at 165, Barbosa gets a start over Anthony White. Does really, really good with an 18-3 tech fall. Here's what things got interesting, though. Rutgers had a 16-7 lead. I mean, so far, everything was pretty much going as expected except for that Shawver loss. Then Jackson Turley gets upset by Branson John. I don't even know his record, but I know it's not a solid record. He's not even ranked, and Turley's ranked number 23. So a huge upset right there. And the Maryland crowd, although they wrestle in the Xfinity Center Pavilion, which is a little room, not the basement, but it's the first floor of the Xfinity Center. It's like a high school gym basically inside the Xfinity Center. That's where their volleyball games are. So it's pretty small, but I do have to say the crowd got extremely loud for that. I mean, when you're in a small room and people are screaming, it's gonna get really loud, kind of like the rack. But yeah, it was really, really loud. Then you go to 184 and Jackson Smith, a really, really good wrestler. He beats Shane Cartagena Walsh by major decision, and out of nowhere, Maryland only chose by 2, 16-14. Rutgers leads, and not just me, Rutgers was on the verge of almost losing this game. It was a scare. So, thankfully, John Posdanski responds with a nice tech fall over Chase Mahelnick, and Rutgers has a nice 21-14 lead then. And then, by that point, they already mathematically won the match, because even if they lost by pin at heavyweight, it still would have been 21-20. And so, Goodale put John O'Donnell, the backup at heavyweight, in for Yaroslav Savakuski, and I don't even know what happened. He took too many stalling calls, so he got disqualified, which automatically gave Maryland the 6-point win in that bout, kind of as if Seth Neville's pinned him. So Rutgers won 21-20. So the last bout was kind of just, let me just let this guy wrestle. But the fact that Rutgers won 21-20 is still very, very scary. I think it goes back to that Jackson Turley loss at 174, which should have never happened. That's really what caused the nerves. I mean, besides that, Connor Harrer loses to 18-0 Ethan Miller. Harrer's a freshman. He's pretty good, but he's still, improving. Braxton Brown, Shawver. That bout will happen again at Big Tens. I can guarantee that. That's 2 guys ranked so close. Shawver 9, Braxton Brown 11. That's going to happen again. Shawver lost this time, but he can definitely get one back up on him at Big Ten. So, that bout at 174 really was what swung the favor in the tide of Maryland, and they almost pulled off the upset, but Rutgers still squeaked it out.
Well, I mean, realistically, you look at that match, and Rutgers was up 21-14, you said. And then you don't throw in the towel, but you throw in somebody that usually isn't in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So, honestly, if that match would have meant something to the score for Rutgers and Slavakuski ends up wrestling, do you think that Rutgers comes away with more points in that match? Do you think Slavakuski comes away with a victory in the heavyweight?
That's an interesting question. I mean, Slavakuski and Neville's also have met before. So I'm going back to my article actually to confirm what I'm saying. But yeah, so Slavakuski lost to Neville's last season in the duel at JMA, and then he beat him at Big Ten championships. So that he's 1-1 against him. So I think Slavakuski definitely could have won that bout. But Neville's also is a really good wrestler. I believe he's ranked number 12. Yes, he is. Slavakuski ranked number 7. So, that Neville's could have won. It's tough to predict, but I do think that if whoever did win, it would have been by decision. So it only would have been 3 points for that team. I don't think it would have been a major decision or anything. I mean, Slavakuski was coming off a pin against Gable Stevenson. I mean that's very different. Yeah, that's very different. But yeah, so I'm confident Slavakuski would have either won by decision or lost by decision. So yeah, but I still think this match was a little scary. It really shouldn't have been like this. So if let's just say Slavakuski wrestled Neville's and he lost, it would have been 21-17. So not as close. That's still
closer than you'd like.
Yeah, still closer than you would like. I think. But also, again, just looking at the matches, the wrestlers who lost, like Cartagena Walsh, again, a redshirt freshman over with Jackson Smith, a really, really good wrestler, moved down a weight class this season. He wrestled John Poznanski last season. I think Poz won that one, but then the favorites pretty much were all, the guys who were favored for Maryland all basically won. I mean, Braxton Brown wasn't favored per se because he's ranked 2 lower than Dylan Shaver, but I mean, watching that bout, it was very, very even. So, Maryland won where they should have won, and then 174 was the big upset. So, Jackson Turley, I love Jackson Turley, but he's just been very, 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 inconsistent. And he has goals of being a national champion this year in his final season on the Banks, but if you're going to wrestle that inconsistently, that's just not going to happen. I mean, we'll see. Rutgers has 2 matches left to end the season at home against Michigan State and UPenn. 2 matches they're favored in, but we'll see how Rutgers fares out in that stretch, Nick.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about how close the match was, 21-20, obviously. Does it change at all, do you think, if Slavakuski ends up wrestling in that heavyweight match? Because ultimately, at the end of it, it didn't matter mathematically.
Yeah.
And Rutgers throws in a backup. Do you think that changes at all? I mean, I know the two have wrestled before, so you kind of think, would Rutgers have picked up, say, 3 more points, or the other way around?
No, I mean, I definitely could see that happening. I mean, going into the match, Slavakuski ranked 7, Seth Neville's ranked number 12. So, on paper, Slavakuski is the favorite, despite the series being tied at 1-1. It would have been fun to see. I was looking forward to that matchup again. I'm sure we'll see it at Big Tens. I'm 99% sure that's what happened. But yeah, I think no matter what happened, even if Seth Neville's won, Rutgers still would have won 21-17, so it wouldn't even mattered. But yeah, Nick, I think, Goodale knew that Rutgers had it in the bag. Maybe Slavakuski is a little dinged up. I don't really know, obviously, the status of him, so that's why he put O'Donnell in. And also, John O'Donnell, a senior, maybe Goodale was like, yeah, it's okay, but get you back out there, give you some more time on the mat, because, he's a backup. So after all, you want to get the guy some more matches under his belt, even though he's a senior and he's going to graduate. But yeah, I don't think it really matters. But it still was a close loss, a close win for Rutgers, a little concerning. But like I said, they have 2 home games left against Michigan State. Matches. 2 home matches left against Michigan State and UPenn. They're favored in that. We'll see how it fares out, but they are on track to win their next 2 home game matches.
Well, it kind of seems like it's the story of the weekend for Rutgers was close games, some wins, as we saw with wrestling, and unfortunately for other teams like the men's lacrosse team, a close loss. They go up against Stony Brook. Now, Stony Brook is a bit of an anomaly. They were solid back in, say, 2015, 2016. Haven't been great over the past 3 or 4 years. But for some reason, whenever they play Rutgers, it's always a close game. I think the largest margin of victory for Rutgers in the last 3 matchups was 4 goals.
Wow.
So, very tight game. Back in 2022, when Rutgers men's lacrosse made it to the Final Four, it was a 1-goal game that Rutgers squeaked out. And it was another 1-goal game. Unfortunately, Rutgers is on the other side of. They dropped 9-8 the first game of the season against Stony Brook. And the way Rutgers came out, you wouldn't have expected the outcome of this game to be what it was. Rutgers came out firing. 4 straight goals. They looked like world beaters. But all of a sudden, Stony Brook made some adjustments. They got in the shooting lanes. They got in the passing lanes. And, you got to give a lot of credit to the goaltender for Stony Brook, Jamison McCallahan. Great game. Started off very rough, I will say, to put it nicely, but ended on an absolute heater, basically shutting Rutgers down. I mean, the only real goal production you had Joe Junkirkis with 2 goals, the transfer. You had Colin Zeller had 2 early goals, and then you had Casey Mangillo with the hat trick, 3 goals and an assist. But they shut down a lot of Rutgers players that you wouldn't have expected. J.J. Aiello, who has been outstanding to start the season, held to no goals. I mean, Dante Koulis, no goals, only 1 shot. You look at Colin Cardillo, only an assist on the day. So props to Stony Brook for making those adjustments, and they came away with a big upset win.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Cardillo had a team-high 6 shots on goal, Nick, and, none of them found the back of the cage. So, very concerning loss for Rutgers. I mean, I remember talking about this with you on WRC before the LIU game that they won 17-3, the home opener last Tuesday. Non-conference games are extremely important in lacrosse. I mean, only 16 teams make the big dance, and if you lose a game like this to Stony Brook at home, it's already really bad for your RPI. It's already really, really bad just for your ranking and everything. Now they go on the road against Army, which they lost to last season at home, an ugly loss, and it's going to be probably a tough result again for Rutgers. But, I mean, also another big point about this is just the offense that Rutgers lost in the offseason, losing Shane Knobloch, Ross Scott to the PLL, and then Jack Amon going over to Happy Valley. I mean, the replacements at first seem pretty solid. I mean, Joe Junkirkis, like you said, the transfer, and then, J.J. Aiello, the freshman, and then, Mangillo, the other transfer. They seem like good guys, good pickups, but I don't really know, Nick. I mean, only time will tell, but losing to Stony Brook 9-8 after such a hot start in the game, and then you let Stony Brook completely come back into this one, and, I mean, I'm sure if you were calling it, whoever was doing play-by-play in that third quarter when they just went on that 5 goal run, you were like, oh no, what is going on? And then
5 unanswered goals in the third.
Yes, and then Joe Junkirkis did get one back to make it a 1-point game, but with 12 seconds to go, and Rutgers just couldn't muster up a equalizer, and they ended up losing. But yeah, this game should not have been this way. I mean, it's just a very concerning defeat.
And, you talk about some of the players that Rutgers lost. One of those players was actually in attendance on Saturday. Shane Knobloch was in the building.
Yeah,
was hoping to see a Rutgers win, but unfortunately the number 19 Scarlet Knights go down. And, with a season so short, that ranking is not going to be there come this week.
No.
And it's going to be very tough to get it back, especially when you have a lot of ranked opponents on the schedule. I mean, you have Army coming up next, and that's away. Then you have Loyola and St. Joe's, which you should win. But then you go March 18th, you got a 7 p.m. game with one of the best lacrosse teams in the country this year in Princeton. And it doesn't get much easier playing in the Big Ten. I will say that. Rutgers with a tough loss. And one of those games where I said it on the broadcast, actually, with our good friend Eddie Kalegi. I said, this game means nothing for Rutgers if they win. You're supposed to win this game.
Yeah.
But if you lose, then the questions start coming in. And there goes the rankings, kind of similar to what we saw with basketball. And if you're Stony Brook, that was their first game of the year. So
really?
A little bit of an advantage. You had some tape on Rutgers. Rutgers didn't have any tape on Stony Brook, but still. If you're Rutgers, you're kind of expected to win that game. And ultimately just unable to do so. And as you continue on in this season, you're going to have to play better teams, and you're going to have to play better. You look at women's lacrosse, too, another tough loss, another 1-point loss for a Rutgers team. They lost 10-9 to Army out in West Point. That was their first game of the season, and, it was a game of runs in that one is what I'll say. The first half was pretty much dead even. Rutgers scores 3 in the first, Army 1. You go to the second, Army scores 5, Rutgers scores 1. And then in the third, Rutgers scores 4, Army scores 2. So it was very back and forth, but ultimately it was Army netting the late goal that put them over the edge. So not a great start for the season for the women's lacrosse team. They do have one more game on the road. They play Monmouth on Wednesday out in West Long Branch, New Jersey, before they come back home for their home opener against the Delaware Blue Hens. But, tough weekend for Rutgers sports. Women's basketball being the only team, women's basketball and wrestling being the only 2 teams with wins. I mean, you hope for more, but hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I do want to bring back for women's lacrosse, I mean, no Cassie Spillis. And she, best player in program history, Nick, 266 goals. And, by the way, everyone talks about her 2022 season, 69 goals. And, obviously, Rutgers had a good year that year. You know, that was her best year. But Coach Lehman was Big Ten Coach of the Year. They lost to Maryland in the Big Ten Championship, but still, got that far. And then made it to the tournament. Lost to Stony Brook. Rutgers men's lacrosse familiar with that team in the second round of the NCAA tournament. But still got a win against St. Joe's in the first round. And that was a great year for Rutgers, regardless. 2022, 16-5, 4-2 overall. But who cares? That's a couple of years ago. But Spillis was great that year. But last year, her last season at Scarlet Knight, 74 goals. That's insane. And you want to know the next goal scorer for Rutgers had the next most goals?
Let's hear it.
Well, I want you to guess the number, actually.
So can you give me Spillis' number one?
74.
So it's a single season, you're saying?
So last season, 2024, she had 74 goals.
Would it be her with 60 some odd goals?
No, I'm saying who had the second most goals in the team last year.
Oh my God, maybe the number was 27.
You're actually really close. 20.
Wow.
Peyton Tini.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a freshman last year. She's a sophomore now. Yeah, very good year for her. Still, regardless as a freshman, but the fact that you lose, this isn't even you lose somebody who's good. Like, you lose the program's best player ever, most goals in program history by a good enough margin. I don't know the exact number. I know TT Nazalonsky is second, but I don't know how many she had. But the fact that Spillis, I know, was ahead by, I would say probably at least 20, 30 goals, more than that, ahead of the second most goals in program history. And the fact that you lose her, of course, it's going to happen. She's going to graduate. It was her last year. It was her fifth year. But that really begs the question of, again, where are these goals going to come from? Because now that you lose her, and you look at the person with the next most goals last year and was 20 goals, where is the goals going to come from?
Yeah, it's a drop off of 50 goals
from
number one and number two. But, long season ahead of us. One more thing to touch on real quick. Rutgers softball kicked off their season. Not a great start, 1-4, with their lone win being against Cleveland State back last Friday. They won 6-2 and then lost to Middle Tennessee State University 8-1. Lost to Louisville 8-2 and then dropped 2 games to Liberty over the weekend 5-2 and 8-4. They'll move on and go to the Lion Invitational in Texas this upcoming week. First game Friday, and they'll play that throughout the weekend. And they're not home for a little bit. They have a couple of those invitational tournaments. They have the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic out in California after that. A couple games there before they have a tournament in Alabama. And they got a lot of games. And finally, they don't come home. I thought Seton Hall was a home game. They don't come home until March 11th when they play Wagner. So a long stretch away from home, which obviously you're used to seeing with softball because the weather in Jersey is not conducive for outdoor sports like baseball and softball this time of year. But baseball also will kick off its season coming up soon. I'm excited for the baseball season. I'm kind of scared for the baseball season as a fan and as somebody that covers the team just because how many guys you lost last year. Obviously, probably the name that sticks out most is Joshua Kuroda-Grauer being drafted by the Oakland, technically still Oakland, but not playing in Oakland Athletics. So a lot of spots to fill, but Rutgers baseball will kick off their season this Friday out in Georgia against Kennesaw State. But Matty M, that is all the sports we have this week. Another action-packed week. We're going to have a lot of these coming up with all the sports going on. And we'll have you covered right here on the Rutgers Rundown on both YouTube and online at thedailytargum.com. You can find us. But signing off for now, my co-host Matt Mangam, for myself, saying thanks so much for listening and tune in next week for more Rutgers Rundown podcasts.